Good morning, folks. Jack Allsop here from StorageCraft. I will allow another few minutes so that people who are a little slow getting to the meeting or the webinar have a chance to join. Just a quick question. Can everybody hear me? Okay, somebody can just, yep. Thank you very much. Will? Perfect. Thanks, folks. I'll just give a few ground rules in about another 2 or 3 minutes. We'll let the rest of the folks join us. We'll get going in about a minute, folks, if that's okay. I'm a tad early. All right, close enough. Good morning, folks. Again, Jack Allsop here from StorageCraft. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive on our new product called ShadowXafe. There is obviously some confusion between some of the words that we use today. So ShadowXafe is the new backup application based on the core of our old technology, but taking it into the next 5 to 10 years is where we're heading with this product, obviously. The other confusion is this is ShadowXafe. More about that in 2 seconds. The other confusion that we get is the OneSafe, which is the appliance that StorageCraft bought primarily to ensure that ShadowXafe had something decent to back up to, but give us some security from CryptoLocker, not some, complete security from CryptoLocker as best as we can, and also compressed dedupe and performance and a whole bunch of other things. So today's session is purely and simply about the ShadowXafe component. And I just threw this together just to give you some idea what I want to talk about. What is ShadowXafe and where did it start from? Okay, so I'm just going to close down my Outlook, please, folks. It's going to annoy us if I don't. 110,000 emails a day sort of stuff. Yes. Okay, so where did this whole thing start from? The most important part to understand about the ShadowXafe component is it is host-based for vCenter ESX. It has the capabilities of dealing with Hyper-V. At the moment, the Hyper-V installations require the agent component. So it could be virtual servers, absolutely. There could be physical servers out there, all with the different bits and pieces on it. So I think what I'll quickly do here is just to show you, this is a network that I have. This machine here is a Hyper-V server, and so is this one. It is running the agent that I require for ShadowXafe for me to do the fast restores and whatever, but we'll go through some of that in a minute. So let's go back here. Let's log into this device, and people are going to ask some questions around here when we log in to this. This screen that you're about to see is what is commonly called the director. Okay. Now you'll see here that I've got an unhealthy environment reboot required. I actually did reboot it yesterday afternoon. It for some reason hasn't refreshed yet. But this is the screen that you get, and you can see the data usages and whatever else. This particular piece of software we call the ShadowXafe director. The director basically is the management, monitoring, reporting console for the new product. And so from here, I'm basically going to take you to configuration, because I think that's the most important part. The environments that I have here, I have ESX vCenter, and you can see that here. I'm connected to it. StorageCraft agents. I have 2 agents. The first one is one that's sitting on the host of another ESX server. Sorry, my apologies. I'll get it right. The first agent that I've got is installed on this Hyper-V server. I'm using a 2012 R2, and that's the oldest version we will support. We do not support 2008 R2. So 2012 R2, 2016 and 2019. So there's my first agent. And the other agent I've got on here is a guest sitting on another Hyper-V server, this main Hyper-V server here. So if I open up Hyper-V on this particular server, you can see it. And I did that for a particular reason. I shifted that, didn't I? Sorry, folks. It's actually sitting on this one. There's the agent sitting on a Hyper-V server. So I've got an agent installed into that machine there. So it can be for 2 reasons, for backing up. This one here, I've put the agent on here for a completely different reason, which we'll come to in a minute. Okay, so moving on from there, I have obviously the vCenter server. We can go and connect to that if you like. But next thing you do, obviously, is go and create some storage. That is what it's all about. The 2 pieces of storage that I'm using, one is a OneSafe device, which is this particular hardware appliance. It's called a OneSafe. This one's using some of the old names. That name will change this month sometime to OneSafe. It is an object-oriented store. Now, today we're not overly concerned about what this device does, how it does it, and where it does it. Just simply to say that using this device in the right manner, I get compression dedupe. Do you have to use one of them? No. I can use a Windows box if you like. I could use a QNAP NAS using ZFS. I would get some compression dedupe out of ZFS. So the storage is basically up to you. Now, if I go here, and I think it's important that we do this, you can go and add, NFS type shares, if that's what you want. You can add iSCSI, you can add StorageCraft Cloud for nearline disaster recovery. This one here is extremely beneficial if an entire site goes down, because I can scan them obviously in the cloud, but also I can restore from them in the cloud. Then of course you pick the sites that you're using and the server name and whatever else. And so if you have a look here, you can see the 2 storage components, SMB components that I'm using. One word of caution, please. Be careful, even on a Windows server, that you turn off SMB1. This product gets a little confused with SMB1, which is the old NT4 CIFS. For those who still refer to it as a CIFS share, that's SMB1, should be turned off. It's NT4. Now, the service nodes, folks, and I'm going to show you how I actually deployed all of this, but the first 2 things to get installed is this one system, which is what you see here, commonly called inside the organization as the director. That's the one that does, we're going to back up this, we're going to back it up to there, and we're going to do whatever. So that's that one system or director. Now, each site has to have what's called a service leader. It's a service node that has jobs attached to it. It is then responsible to do the backups and whatever else is going on. And we'll see more of that when I get into the policies. This particular service node up here is one I added in yesterday, and it is the one that is sitting on top of this machine here, this Hyper-V server. And there's a reason why I have that service node sitting on here. It's for the instant restore capabilities that we have. You can have every site that you create. If I come down here to sites, if there was another site that I wanted to add, I could add a site in here. As long as it's not the same IP address. If I add another site in here to this same IP address structure that I have, it will come up and say boundary error. But if I had another site somewhere that was connected via, say, MPLS, all right, I could definitely add that site in, and I could then say, right, now in that site, I will deploy a site leader. You can deploy as many service nodes for as many of the ESX or Hyper-V hosts that you have. There's always a site leader per site. It's the one that is responsible to making sure, basically, that everybody does what the director tells it to do. And so you can see here that I have the director sitting here. We're obviously connected to that web page. I have a service leader for this particular site. And I also have a service node because that service node is sitting on top of my Hyper-V machine. We've been through the sites, all these fingerprints and whatever are required. Integrations, you can have the ConnectWise stuff, SMTP for email alerts, absolutely. Users groups and whatever else, okay? Now, this one safe cluster down here is to replace this, okay? And that's what that's all about. I'm using the public one at the moment, not the private one, but I could. All right, so let's get into the basics of how this thing works, folks. First thing, obviously, is policies. And no, you know what? Let's step backwards for 2 seconds. Let's go back to here. And there are two pieces of software sitting on the desktop here. So if I double click on this one, it is an ISO file that automatically, because it's 2012, allows me to mount it. And then we can come in here and we can go for the StorageCraft deployment tool. This is how you actually deploy this product. Now, I'm going to step part way through it because I've already done it once already. But let's open this thing up. Basically, by the time you have this, 10 minutes later, you should be able to then kick off your first backup. That's how simple StorageCraft developers have tried to make the deployment of this product. And so here's the deployment tool. Yeah, click here if you want to see the user guides or whatever else. Somebody has to agree to this long thing. We've all read that. Wonderful. Now, because I'm using vCenter here, all right, this tool is to use for the vCenter. If you want to just use the Hyper-V and still have a director, I'll show you that one in 2 seconds. But this one here just says, what's your IP address? And obviously, and some sort of a password. It'll log in as long as I haven't made any silly mistakes, which is possible on a Tuesday morning, I guess. But it'll log in. Now you can see here, a one system for managing a one safe. That's this, okay? That's that part of it. If I come back to here, I can go ShadowXafe. Well, that's ShadowXafe. So when I deployed that ShadowXafe, and I will just fire off this, folks, so you can see where it sits. I am not going to go through the web console. I'm just going to use the fat client for the moment. Let's go across to this one. Let's ignore that. This is my main ESX server, not the other little toy one that I have. It's just demonstration stuff only. Would be nice today. Yes, I know it's being managed by something else, and that's cool. You can see here, this is what I've deployed. Now, that is two parts of that deployment. So in here, it says, do you want to deploy ShadowXafe? ShadowXafe, the first deployment will also include the service leader. So if I come back to here, we go back to the nodes, and we go to service nodes. This first deployment is this, which is the one system, the director web page, and the first service leader. So here, that's what that does. Here is for other service nodes for scaling OneSafe and or ShadowSafe. And then you can install or upgrade VAO filters for instant restore. This one here is critical. And both of my ESX servers at the moment are having issues with this. Something there I've got to fix, and I'm not 100% sure what it is at the moment. I may have to rebuild mine, but I'll show you what's supposed to happen and what doesn't happen. So this is the deployment tool. Fairly simple. It's about 1.2, 1.4 gig in size, and you just keep going next, 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 and it just does its job. Yes, cancel installation. So that is that part of it. And I also have the agent here. Now, I've used the agent on this particular machine, and if you double click on this, it probably won't let me go too far for this, but if I click modify, you can see how I've got all the Hyper-V features in here, and I've got vSnap in here if I decide to back up the host as well. So I'm not going to go any further than that, because what it did was put the service node on this machine under the Hyper-V, and that's that service node sitting there, which is this service node up here, okay? So that's how I got the Hyper-V service node in place, because that's rather important. The whole installation for all of this, 10 minutes tops, as long as you sort of have an understanding of where it is you're trying to go, what you're trying to achieve, it just works, which is a good part about this. So now you can see where I've got my bits and pieces. All right, let's go a little further. We'll get to some troubleshooting bits and pieces shortly. In here, I've created a policy name, and it says take snapshots every 30 minutes. Where am I going to stick those backups? So that's one of my destinations that I've created, and that's what it is. And in here, you can go and set what protection levels, retention levels that you want. Days of 30-minute recovery points, 7 days. Dailies are 7 days. Weeklies are 6. Monthlies are 6. And here I've also set up a replication. So I'm going to replicate from the OneSafe to the Windows box, and I've got sync. You could, creating destinations in the right ways with the right bits and pieces, you can actually sync to a destination across the web using HTTP, gRPC or HTTPC. We open up a couple of ports and it will authenticate both ends, and we can replicate using gRPC across the internet as well. So we're also using something very similar to get to the cloud services. So that's what a policy is all about. And how long would that take to knock together? Probably take longer in the mouse clicks and typing than it would to do anything else. Then obviously you can come into protection. Now, I'm going to show you this screen for a few minutes so that we can get our heads around exactly what I'm trying to achieve. So the one that says VM tells me that's sitting on an ESX server somewhere. You can look at the IP addresses down the side there and work it out. So I've got my principal domain controller sitting on a VM, an ESX VM. I have a Ubuntu 18 box that I'm testing and playing and dealing with at the moment. We're not going to go too deep into that one, but it's also sitting on an ESX box. And these last two servers here are interesting because they're identically built Windows 2008 R2 servers. Now, the top one is sitting on an ESX box. The bottom one is sitting on a Hyper-V server, this one here actually, and it has the agent installed. So the agent installation for ShadowSafe, well, let's go and have a look at it, to be honest. This is the agent install MSI here, and I'm not particularly interested in that at the moment. Let's go into here. Let us go down to Program Data, StorageCraft, and ShadowSafe. And if you look in here, we've got some tunnels set up. This is the Butler agent. All right. You can go and see some comment in the ini file, and you can see the logs. Okay. Let's go to Program Files, StorageCraft, and XSafe. This, for all intensive purposes, looks identically in appearance and functionality to SPX using our STC VSM Snapshot mini filter driver. It functions identically, except there's one major difference. If I go into the service manager over here, or task manager, I'm going to go to services. We'll pick S. And there's the StorageCraft agent there, which in SPX terms would have been Shadow Protect SPX service. And then down here, if I do the right thing, there's our shadow copy provider. So this agent installation looks identical in terms of how it functions, except one major fundamental difference, folks. When the files are written out, they are not written as SPS and SPIs. This is the fundamental change that we have made to this product. We might even, why don't we do that, just so we're all clear on this. I think I called it that this time. That's what you get for not remembering what you called your destinations. Sorry, folks, give me 2 seconds. There. All right, folks, ignore this snapshot folder here, please. If I open this up, you'll see there are 2 sets here, and they are for the host-based backups. They reference particular files, and they then reference particular points in time, which are recovery points. Most people, when they first see this, go, how the hell do I sort this out? You don't have to. That's the fundamental part of it. So here's a set for a particular point. And then the images themselves, I don't know, let's pick, we feel like 2F today. And we go into here, and we go into here, and you can see the data. This is the data for a particular backup, the extents being where it fits in a file allocation table. You can open up after these if you like with a notepad or something like that. That don't make a lot of sense to anybody, and that's the idea. This here is the GUID that references the storage as specified in here, okay? So that's how we keep track of it. You can actually import these if you've got a site that disappears for whatever reason, and you're able to pick up some of this information. It'll just re-import everything and go, yeah, I know what this is all about. So one of the key things here was, with regards to this, was how we wrote those files out. Because the SPF files, folks, and it's kind of difficult to explain, but I'm going to try to put it simply. The SPX backups, the SPFs and SPIs, were literally, I need a copy of this sector, and this sector. Now, those sectors that we were backing up were not in a contiguous form as it was laid out on the disk. It was just, oh, I got this one, and it was ad hoc all over the place. While, yes, we had nice compression, you could not dedupe those files because by nature, they were unfriendly to hardware that understands dedupe. So one of the key things that our development team said was, right, we're still going to use the power of our STC VSM, and I'll get to more about that shortly, but they then decided to say, no, we've got to write these backups out in a format that we can stick on just about anything, and people will feel comfortable with the compression and potentially dedupe that they get, okay? So that's why when you look at some of these backups here, it doesn't make an awful lot of sense to us at this point in time, and it's not intended to, but we know what part of the image is, we know what size, we know what it is, what more importantly, ShadowXafe knows what it is. And so that's where we're able to get a lot of compression and dedupe out of specific pieces of hardware. Anything that understands it is fine. You can use a QNAP using ZFS, and it will give you some compression, some dedupe. Absolutely. Okay, that's the whole idea behind it. I guess that's why StorageCraft ended up buying this company, to make sure that our next generation backup software understood what was going on. So yes, I've got that one there, and these two servers are identical in terms of build, but it will be interesting at some point to have a look at what's actually happening with them, okay, in terms of the backups. All right. From that point forward, obviously, folks, this one here, I've got an agent sitting on it. More importantly, I have a service node sitting on that one. I don't intend to back that up, but I want to use that for a specific reason. So now, obviously, the logical thing now is just trying to shift something out of my face here, folks. It's all right. If you're connected to the main machine here itself in the production area, you can come in here and you can bring a support bundle down. Now, the support bundle will bring you the information associated with the one system or the director, and also the site service leader. When you produce those other service nodes, you can connect to them via a PuTTY interface or a web interface. They're Red Hat, CentOS machines. So if I go over here to service nodes, I'll go and launch the cockpit. This is the cockpit for my main service node. A lot of people go, yeah, well, I don't know an awful lot about Linux, and you don't need to, folks. That's why we have here the support bundle, and it will bring down. I'll bring one down for you, and we will save the file, and it'll go and save it down on my drive shortly. And so from there we can move forward. We will come back and have a look at that. So I've got a policy set up. Now inside that policy, I have included these machines. All right. There's my main domain controller. There's a Ubuntu box. There is the 2008 R2 butler who's doing absolutely nothing, and I'm honest about that. And I also have one sitting on a Hyper-V box, but I'll put the agent on there. And it's interesting to compare these two. All right. So let's go and have a look at some backups for a moment. We'll pick up on the domain controller. This is a 2016 domain controller, my main one for this little site that I call my test lab. And you can see here that every 30 minutes, the backups are 25, 94. This one here was a little large, obviously, because there were some patches being put on. I would suspect that's what it is. I shouldn't say obviously, but I suspect that was what was happening. But as you can see throughout the day, they don't change an awful lot. Okay. So that's a working domain controller. We will come back to one of those machines in a minute. This one here is at the host level for that 2008 R2 machine. So it's sitting on a ESX server, and you can see the size here of the backups. And you'll notice over here it says application consistent, sitting on the OneSafe, yes, sitting on Windows, yes. Now, this information here is important, because when you go to do a restore, it'll say, well, I'm going to pick what I think is the optimal restore point. And you go, fine, but you could pick the other one depending upon where you're trying to stand it up. But anyway, see the size of the backups. These are for this particular server. As I said, it's 2008 R2. It's doing nothing. It's identically built to the other one. And it's just to get a feel for the differences between host and guest-based backups. Are they both identical in terms of what they've done? Absolutely. But the sizes are different because of the way it works. So this one here is the agent one. It's cleaning up after it's done one. But we'll go and have a look. The other one, I think, if you remember, was 25 to 90 meg at the outside. 20 to 40 was common. This one is, and as you can see, it is that size. Okay, it's about 115, 110, 120, whatever. And so you can also see some other information. This is a guest-based backup that is not compressed and encrypted at the guest level, or at the guest level, whether it's physical or virtual is irrelevant, sitting on Hyper-V, whatever. They are not compressed or anything by design, because that's where we want the hardware appliance to work for us to the best of our ability. And you can just see the fundamental difference between them. This one is at the sector level, and this one here, I will give you the answer to this one. This one here, which is identical to the other one, except it's sitting on an ESX box. And it's backup, as you can see. All right. This one is using changed block tracking. Now, most people will go, oh, well, that's common. All right. Since ESX 6, the snapshot engine that VMware is using is based on our technology. Excuse me, just have a little drink. It's based on our technology, so made logical sense for us as a company to utilize that capability to the extent that VMware intended it to be used. And so on the ESX box, we are actually able to talk to the VMDK that represents this server, this computer. If we go and have a look at the settings for that, and if we have a look at the disks for this thing, all right, the VMDK files there, we are able to reference the VMDK for that machine at the VMDK level, and we call it in 64K chunks. Blocks, if some people would prefer me to use that name. It's not a cluster, it's a block of logical data sets sitting on in a VMDK file. And so we use change block tracking. Change block tracking gives us this ability to have consistent application, consistent backups of Active Directory, Exchange, SQL. I'd be a little careful about the SQL ones. We could do it, but I'd still think that I would much prefer to do it at the client level than at a host level for a heavily loaded SQL box. If it wasn't heavily loaded, go for it. Do it. It's fine. Okay? Just works. So, sitting back here, obviously, we are using our capabilities that VMware are leveraging, and we're just using that to talk to the guest at the VMDK level to say, hey, we're flushing you to disk, mate, do your job. And because it's got the VMware tools installed on it, it follows the logical sequence, and we just then therefore back it up. Now, pick any one of my ESX boxes. If you try to do them all in the same job, basically what's going to happen is the director, the service node will be told there's 4 servers over there, but don't do them all at the one hit, because the disk I/O would become a major problem for you, and you would end up with serious issues. So by design, the policy is just going to sort of go, right, there's 4 of you, I'm going to take you first, you second, you third, and you fourth, and then I'll spread them out and say, right, every 30 minutes, that's the order I'm going to do them in. Now, if I go here and we just go to Snapshot Manager, we use changed block tracking correctly. So I am here, there are no snapshots. The minute I do a snapshot here, it doesn't stun the machine in any way. Does it slow down a little bit? Absolutely, but it never stuns it. And then we create the snapshot. We back up the snapshot using gRPC across the network, and then we release the snapshot, merge it back in, and we can move forward from there. So that's how we actually do those things. Okay. So, right, I want the web page check it on this one. So that's exactly what's happening here, and it is interesting to compare. I think one of the other comparisons I like to do, because I've got SPX installed on this machine, and if I go to the host level backups of that same machine, pardon me, you can see that, the average size, let's pick a size, folks, shall we? Is everyone comfortable with about 30 meg? I'm comfortable with average. Sure, there's an odd one here that's a little higher on that one there as well, but let's say 30 meg over the last, 2 or 3, 4 hours. So I'm going to come back to this machine here because I want to go to here. and I want to go to here where my SPX backups are going to, and I'll pick this domain controller. And these are the SPX 682 backups that are happening. All right, 1.18 meg every 30 minutes, not at the same time as the other one, obviously, 1.6 meg. All right, come back over here. These are significantly larger, but because of their ability to be compressed and deduped, stored on the right device, obviously, you get a lot of benefits out of that. As we all know, these things are not compressible and they're not dedupable. Well, they're already highly compressed, but you can't dedupe them very well at all, if ever. So, and you can see, you know, how long it's actually taking, and I can show you all of the log files on it, whatever. The SPX ones, still a very efficient style of backup, but they are not as easy to deal with as these ones. So let's go back over here. Now, the deep dive here, I'll just quickly open this up because there should be something in our download folder now. We'll come back to, here's the STC support bundle for my director and service leader for this site. So we'll just extract to that. And here it is. And you can have a look at the back-end nodes. There are 2 of them. All right, it gathers all the information. You can go through all of these bits. So you can see the disks, you can see the processors, you can see what's installed on them. You can see a whole bunch of bits and pieces. And here's the processors, the mounts, that's there. It'll show you all of that, okay? If we go to the other one, this one here is the bigger one. Here's the bar, and you can go and have a look at the logs for this particular machine. You can see a lot more detail in here. Just trying to get to which one. Yeah, that's the right one. So you can see the disks that I have in this particular node, and you can see what they're all about. We can change these. Whoops, sorry, folks. We can change the reporting capabilities of this so that we actually get more information, less information, but generally out of this, we can always sort out what's going on inside of those machines. So you can see what's installed on it, you can see what it's doing, versions, and all those bits. That's the information, obviously, the developers want if there's a bug. And here's the director, of course. The director is the web console, basically. So you can go in and have a look at the director and see what it's up to. Okay, so you can see the websites, you can see the dump of the SQL database, services, one system dump, yeah. All those log files are there. Right, now, obviously, folks, one of our more important sections here is why we're bothering with all of this. The major reason StorageCraft has spent and invested a lot of time in the ShadowXafe OneSafe product. ShadowXafe being what we're talking about today with the director and the service nodes, is all about recovery. We've always believed that recovery should be our focus. And with SPX, it was a pretty good recovery process, you know, 8-9 years ago. Over the last 6 years, it sort of has not progressed anywhere. And obviously, challenges arose. So we had to redesign the way we were going to do things, and that's what we've done here. So I'm going to pick on this machine for the sake of the exercise. Now remember, this one is the butler, all right? It is an agent-based backup. Sorry, this is the ESX one. My mistake, folks. Please just give me 2 seconds here. We'll go back to this one. This is the agent one, all right? I'll show you the other one in a second as well, but we're going to pick on this point here, and we're just going to simply go recover. Now, see here, because the agent, yeah, I struggle with this one again. Just 2 seconds, folks. I need to work this out. the agent, that's sitting on the Hyper-V host. Cool. All right, let's go to recovery. Let's pick this one, and let's pick this point. And you notice here, up the top, I get these instant restore with virtual boot on vSphere. Now, I don't have that capabilities because both my ESX boxes won't install the VAIO driver that we have by default, that we supply. You might remember when I was showing you this, where we were doing the install, mine don't have the vSphere one. But if I pick the Hyper-V one, it automatically goes, well, I know where I can find a Hyper-V server with virtual boot. And so you can see here the name it wants to give it. I could, put that out if it was doing a fair income one. I'm going to stick it back onto this Hyper-V machine here. Number of CPUs, number of memory, power on, migrate data to Hyper-V. Now, basically what that will do if I go next is just going to go and they use the same name, but it's not the same process. It's similar, but it is much more powerful. So instant restore with virtual boot and this migrate data down here, what it does is it scans the machine in probably 15 to 20 seconds in my environment and allows me to start using it. And then after about 2 or 3 minutes, depending upon the size of the machine for obvious reasons, it will be fully fleshed out and away it'll go. I did one of my other machines, the main controller here, I did that a couple of weeks ago because I made a mess of it and I had to restore it. And the thing that I did here was, sure, I could have done a head start restore. I could have done a recovery CD restore. All I did was use this process. Now, because I was going back to vSphere, I can't do that one. So I did a full VM restore back into, and it's like a Hyper-V scenario. It says, well, I'm going to put it there, I'm going to put it back on there, and it remembers all of this information, keep the original MAC address, and I always take this recovery thing off there because it gets a little confusing, and you just go bang, and it's done. The guys in the States have done full server restores, 20 milliseconds respond to be able to log into it. I'm sure it's not running as quickly as you'd like, but that's what it's all about. So I can take this one here, which is sitting on the ESX box, and I can do the same thing, and I'm going to go restore to Hyper-V. And because I've got the agent and the service note sitting on that Hyper-V server, you can see here which Hyper-V server it's picked because it's already got it registered. And it says this is what we're going to do. Now you can go next and it will give you the basic information. It will tell you where it's coming from, optimal, all right? You may or may not choose that as optimal, but it gives you that capability. You're allowed to pick where you want to go from there. Here, it's just going to use the optimal location because it says, well, I've already got it sitting somewhere, and I'm just going to use that. That's what it's all about, folks. So from there, what do we got to do? You can go and have a look at file recoveries if you like, folks. They are intended for smaller file recoveries. Later on this month, I believe it is, we're going to give you the ability to mount a VHD or a VMDK or whatever against the original machine so you can just recover large files. This is intended just for small files. So you're far better off just starting the machine up somewhere else and just dealing with it from there. So you can see here, there's 100 gig and there's 119. Okay, click on this one, and you can see this is the what's called normally the system reserve type stuff. So it's got all those bits and pieces, bad clusters, MSFT or MFT, the file allocation tables, the mirror, all those sorts of things. So it's a very detailed backup, folks. Okay. Let's have another quick look at a few other bits and pieces while we have it here. This is the activity, and you can search individual jobs if you wanted to, but here you can see the activity as we go through the day. It's replicated the Butler machine from source to the site and obviously to the other locations I have. So you got replication. Because I haven't been running them long enough, I don't think we're going to see consolidation yet. This particular box, or this whole environment was only rebuilt last Friday. So, yeah, there's a bit of retention happening there. Okay, not a lot's happening at the moment. As time goes on, you'll start to see more and more. Any alarms, there would be there, one safe, and that's where you can deal with that. And some analytics, folks. Two of these are pretty nice analytics. The third one's pretty ordinary. You can see here, here's a general sort of a graph looking. Here's the ratings one. This is the one that I find more useful. You can pick the month, so I can go back to May, and you can see in May the 3 machines that I had, how many backups I had. And if I go to June, okay, you can see what the backups are up to. You can see that I've missed one in here for whatever reason. So that information is pretty useful to us. And this SLA compliance one down here is a similar look and feel, but it gives it to me in the daily histories here, out of SLA, whatever, and you can see that generally I'm in pretty good shape. The other one, folks, I'll show it to you, but it needs a lot more work in my opinion. This one, capacity planning, it's just a blob. It doesn't tell me anything. It needs to be a graph, and that's what they're working on to see where I'm going to end up over a period of time. It doesn't break down into, months or anything. It just says, well, that's what you're using now. Not a lot helpful in there. All right. And I'll come back to the dashboard, obviously, from here. So how do we deal with things? Right. The first thing, obviously, is, my apologies, in here, when we brought that support bundle down, that gives me the information, obviously, about these 3 devices, okay? The director or the one system, it gives me the information about the site leader and the service node I've got sitting on a Hyper-V machine, okay? So I can do instant reboots and whatever else on there. That's why I've got that there. So the support bundle gives me that information. If you go across to an agent-based machine in here, we'll go down to program data, we'll go to StorageCraft, and in here, log. This is the log that is generated, and if you look at it, it looks a little bit similar to an SPX type log. You can increase the logging capabilities or decrease the logging capabilities. It's just a registry change that you need to do, but you can see exactly what's going on inside of this thing. All right, so local backup, skipping job, disks, what are the writers, what are their statuses, all those sorts of bits. Calculating the backup type, it is just the logging information associated with the backup, okay? If you go down to events, there's nothing in there. Common, this common INI file, if you have a look at it, tells me where the director sits. It tells me the director service node that I'm using. The service actual node, we're using gRPC, and I do want to talk 2 seconds about this one. We are using gRPC for a lot of our replication and backups. If I come back over to here for a second, and we'll go and pick on a machine here, and I'll just simply click on this one. You'll notice here, this is the general log associated with what's going on here, right? In here, it tells me the unique ID. It also tells me the job and whatever else. But notice this, operation transfer data using HOD add transport mode. That is gRPC, folks. And that is exactly what's going on in here. Google RPC over HTTP. And that's exactly what we're doing. And that's exactly how we get bits and pieces replicated around a LAN, a WAN, across the internet, whatever else. Now, I know I'm going to make a mess of this one, but let's go for this. I am making a mess of this. Something that slips me every now and then. No, it's not. It's in here. Sorry, folks. Give me 2 seconds. Not something you do that often, so apologies. Now, this is the CentOS machine that is the director, and it is also the service leader. So that's what this one's all about. Particularly here, I want to go into here, and I'm going to click on this. All right. This is it's quite simple. You can go in through here and two seconds, folks. I will find it again. It's in here, but you can see the carrier is set at 10 gig. I'm blind in one eye, can't see the other for 2 seconds here. Here it is. MTU. Folks, this one is important that we set MTUs. It's been a major issue for just about anything in Australia if you have automatic MTU set at 1500. Now that might work fine on a LAN, but if you've got a 10 gig backbone, I've got quite a few customers running this product, and if they leave it at automatic, then backups are extremely slow. If you have a 10 gig network, I don't have one, but if you do, set it to 9,000 jumbo frames. If you've got to try to replicate across layer 2 type networks, for example, all right, set it to 1472 or 1492. All right, old technologies, ticking it in the right way, because Australia's always had low bandwidth. But when we set one of our customers that I'd worked with, it was automatic, and we changed it and we set it up to 9,000 in jumbo frames, so 9,000. All of a sudden, his backups were going from like 50 megasecond to like 500 megasecond. But then when he tried to replicate between, say, Brisbane and somewhere down the coast on a MPLS style network, he all of a sudden found that link was flooded. And he went, wow, okay, so that's only for the basis, that's fine. He was happy with that. But yeah, it is important that we come into here. And of course, I always miss the MTU part, but if you're looking for performance on a network, it is better to set this to something that you know will work. Now mine, I'm set on a 1 gig network at the moment. One of these days, I've got the 10 gig switch there. I just haven't got 2 cards that I need, but I'll get them and we'll go from there. So another little tip just to help you out. Okay. Yeah, so that was to do with those bits of information. There are quite a few other bits and pieces in here. These 2 settings here to deal with how much we're going to cache before we try to send stuff off. They can also be fine-tuned as well. Encrypt, storage, whatever, cluster IDs, all those sorts of bits and pieces do take effect. Okay, and then in the backup here, that's the authentication stuff, and the tunnel stuff is what is used for the gRPC. All right, so that's on the agent level. Right. Okay, I think at this point, folks, I'm going to open it up. Are there any questions at all? There's a few questions here, so let me go backwards and see if I can pick them up and answer them. Thank you. Yep, cool. Why does it install the service node and then send a Hyper-V checkpoint on it straight away? Okay, so let's go to the Hyper-V server that I have that installed on, which is this one. Mark, I assume you're talking about this. What it does is it just immediately sets that checkpoint that says, well, that's where I am right now, and I know what I'm about. And that's the way the install does it. It's set because the basic service node, I need to explain that one, so just give me 2 secs, folks, and I'll just quickly see. I did not cover that part very well, I do admit. This is the agent software, folks. And on a Hyper-V server, this agent software can do a few things for you. I did sort of mention here, but the Hyper-V role puts that service node in place. Now, I will try to explain. This thing will go through and say, yeah, I'm ready to go, and it will do, and you'll sit there and you go, well, what's it doing? What it's actually doing, folks, is I'll come down here and I'll see if the logs are still in place. Program files, StorageCraft, XSafe, wrong place, Jack. So it must be in here. Okay, you can see the log here. The actual application shuts down, and then what it does here is it checks for certain bits and pieces, and then it says downloading the Hyper-V VHDX file from StorageCraft. It then streams it down and enables the director. It turns on secure tunnel, and you can see all the bits and pieces in here, right? Basically what it's doing, and it takes probably on my network here, it takes about 15 minutes for it to be able to download that and then deal with it. What it does in here, oh, Jack, go to the right place, Turkey. This is the service node, right? It brings that standard VHDX pre-built, brings it down onto the Hyper-V machine, and then goes ahead and creates that snapshot to say, right, from there to here, these are the changes, because I now have to modify the standard VHDX to be able to utilize the resources on this physical machine. And so that's why it does this, because to get from the base VHDX file to here, it has to obviously start up, incorporate a few bits and pieces so that it understands what the actual hardware of the host is sitting on. And so that's why it goes ahead and does this, because that's when it's running, and it works it out, says, fine, I've got this network card, I've got this, that, and the other thing, and whatever else. If we have a look at the settings of this thing, you can see here, but when you see that VHDX without that snap in it, that first checkpoint for the sake of the exercise, it doesn't have this drive in place, it doesn't have the network adapter in place, it has to boot it up, find those bits and pieces. There is a bootstrapper that it uses to get to that point, and therefore then that's why that is generated, because that is the point moving forward that it will use. That's the changes from there to there. And after that, it's just, that's what I'm doing. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Mark. Because that standard VHDX file that we were looking at, you can go to the website and you can actually see it sitting there, but it doesn't have the configuration for the physical machine it's sitting on. That's why that extra stuff. This is an interesting one. Is it possible to exclude volumes from an agent-based backup? From an agent-based backup, there is, at this point, no way to do that. It just basically just says, well, I can see the 2 disks and I'm going to back them up. So disk 0, it's got these 2 bits and this one, and it just says, fine, that's what I'm going to do. From the host-based, absolutely there is a way of doing that to help you out. It's called make a disk persistent. So if I come back over here, if you make one of the disks associated with this machine here, because I'm backing it up at the host level on ESX at the moment, very soon we will have the Hyper-V host-based backup as well. Basically in here, all I have to do is make one of those disks a persistent disk, and it will not back that up. There's a lot of people out there say, yeah, I want to back up this server, but I don't want to back up the data partition because it's actually an iSCSI target sitting on a NAS somewhere that's got a whole bunch of CCTV footage on it. And when a disaster hits, I go, you know what, I'm not really interested, I don't care, I just want the server back, and I can then attach it back to that iSCSI LAN and it'll be fine. So yes, we can make them persistent, and that way we won't back them up at the host level. On the guest level, or agent-based, I should say, not at this point. Okay, we are definitely having that as an addition. Can we see an instant restore? Yeah, why not? Let's see if we can do this. No. Okay. Okay. Well, let's have a go. I haven't actually done this one on this newer version, so let's see. So I got a differentiator. I'm going to call it Butler Agent 1, and we'll just go next. Yep, and go recover. Let's see what happens. Remember, folks, I'm sitting on a gigabit network here. Here's the restore. So if I go back over to here, we can see it here. More importantly, let's go down to here. I'm probably messing with its brain, but that's okay. Oh, it's already started. Oh, well, there you go. This server that it's running on too, folks, I will let you know, it's not much of a machine by any stretch of the imagination, but that's okay. What is our transferring? As you can see, my gigabit networks, and it's not super efficient. Go back here and give it a few more. I would expect this thing to take about a minute before I can actually log into it. And again, it snaps it straight away. We can roll that back in at some point. More interested down here, what's going on? There's those two snap files referencing. All right. We'll come back and have a look. Shouldn't take too long. All right, I'll come back to that. Well, wrong page, Jack. I will come back to that one. Let's see what it actually gets up to and how it's dealing with it. This is the first one I've actually done on a Hyper-V box, gentlemen, so I'm more than curious myself. I was actually hoping this morning to have time to do that one, but you know, let's do it live. What could go wrong? Here's a question from, I'll leave that open, folks, so that we can actually see what it's actually trying to do. I'll go and ask and answer another question here. Does the change still work on the same way as SPX? Incrementals relying on previous incrementals, etc. The basic answer to that is a yes, with a proviso. And so what I want to do is show you that proviso. The easiest way, if I have a bit of history here, I can do it this way. So bear with me for a second and I'll pick this machine. See this here, this communication error? That's because that machine doesn't exist anymore. We're trying to restore this one. I just want to go to this machine. To answer this question, I'll just minimize this. And I'll go back to, because I've got only last Fridays is when I started. At the appropriate point, based on a policy, so based on a policy here, how many months am I going to have things, okay? So basically when the first month rolls around, what you see, and this is the technology that the developers are working on, obviously we've got verifications and we've got retentions and we've got consolidations and whatever else. So if I go back to this here and I pick on this particular machine here, when my first month rolls around, you will not see this full file here. See this one down the bottom here, which is 2136 gig. That's when I created that first full backup of that machine. Now, at the end of the month, you will see that disappear. And it's not disappearing per se, but what it's actually doing is based on the collapsed dailies, weeklies, and monthlies, it is producing, I don't like the word, but I'm going to use it because it's probably comfortable with everybody else. It's a synthetic full, all right? And so I will have that synthetic full, which represents the end of June. I will have that based on this. How many monthly recovery points am I going to have? 6. So I'll have the one at the end of June. All right, and once all these other requirements have been satisfied, the monthly at June, which is a consolidation, then rolls in and creates a synthetic full. So you basically see that full sitting there. So the restoration process, which is probably where you're trying to head with that conversation, and also because you've got a base hanging around for, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever, it does get rolled into a synthetic type of full automatically by the device. I mean, if you want to go and type in here, 24 months, well, it's going to have that first monthly will be the synthetic of the first month, but then it's going to have all these recovery points based on that. So I hope that answers your question, but yes, it is similar to a certain extent, but it also does a lot of other bits and pieces in the process. And you can see that here, okay? If you go and have a look at over here, activity, and you pick a particular server, you want to see the activity for that particular server, all right? You can search an individual job, for example. If you look for that server in particular, you can see where it may have done a consolidation, replication. I don't think we had a look earlier on for one. I think I've got it right down the bottom somewhere. But you will see a retention kick in here. Retention, all right, a few seconds, because what it's done is taken the daily ones. What it's done at that point is taken the dailies and sort of added them in, like the 30-minute incrementals, and added them into a daily based on when it was first generated, not at the end of the day process. All right, I hope that answers your question about that. So similar, but not exactly the same. Mark's asked a question. Can we delete it once we are happy it's working? I assume, Mark, you're talking about in this, whoops, service node. You can't delete that, no, because that is the reference point from when it was properly configured. So you can't delete that in any way, shape or form. That is the base file moving forward. I assume that's what you're talking about, Mark. If I'm incorrect, mate, send me an email and we'll have an offline discussion. I'll read this question out, folks. In a DR recovery, much is made of the instant recovery. Yes, that's correct. If I am using a VMware or Hyper-V host and a QNAP NAS for my backup location, where am I restoring to? If I go back to here, sir, and I'll go back to recovery, I need to go to activity, Jack, your turkey. When we did this one here, the recovery of this Butler agent, we specified where I was going to. So if I go back and pick another machine, for example, and I'll pick, this is my DC, that is currently running on an ESX box because it's got VM on it there. So if I click on that thing, and I don't care where the backups are actually located at this point, I'll just close this down a little bit. You'll see here that its application is consistent, and I've got a copy sitting on the one, say, for the Windows box, right? You know, you can recover from that point. Yeah, sure, fine. So let's go and do a recovery. Now here it says instant restore with virtual boot for vSphere. As I've said, that's not working for me because I have to rebuild my ESX boxes to allow the VAIO driver to be installed, because that's how we do the virtual boot. In SPX's terms, we downloaded a bunch of bits of software from VMware. Not anymore, because when we do a virtual boot using vSphere, we have our own VAIO driver. It's digitally signed by VMware to make sure that it's to their exacting standards. And that's where the restores, the virtual boot restores, we now utilize that driver to write directly to the VM store. Now, as I've said, mine's not working like that because of I think it's an issue with my builds. I've got to go and change them. But if I did have that, then I could. But here's the Hyper-V one. Now, because it already knows that I've got a Hyper-V one sitting there, it will allow me to do an online conversion between an ESX guest and make it a Hyper-V guest. Now, if I use this one will allow me to do a full restore of my domain controller. And now I can go to the VM, you know, and which host am I going to use? That's where it's currently sitting. I could make it sit on that one, and I can make it pick that data store, and notice everything else. It says what options are we using for, all right? And I'm going to go, that's not right, the VM network, and keep the original MAC address so I don't have to worry about IPs and all those sorts of things. And then I can just simply go next, and it will go ahead and do it for me. I don't want to do that at the moment, folks, for a reason that, oh, that's a vSphere one. I was getting confused with Hyper-V, but yeah, that's what you can actually do. You can also do the recovery agent restore if you have a physical box out there. If you want to go back to that physical box, you can start up the recovery agent restore. It is an ISO. It is a whole bunch different to what our current recovery ISOs look like, and it will get an improvement over what we currently do for physical machines. So that's where we're at with that one. As you can see here, it's on this poor little host. It's taken quite a few minutes longer, but you can actually see it coming up, folks. So I'm not trying to, I've actually never done this one before, so I know the theory behind it, but that's it. I'll just move into the next question while we're waiting. I love this question. Okay. Who asked this? Alex. Okay. I'm going to read the question out, folks. Everybody's on the same page. For an MSP, multi-tenanted environment where we manage backups for multiple clients, would we install the director in our data center and service nodes at each customer? Sorry, he's got the right terminology here, my mistake. Would we install the director in our data center? Yes. And service leader at each customer? Yes. Now, that is version 2, which is this product. That's what that's intended for. Okay. You can actually go out there and put service leaders out and go, fine, I can go and put them out on Hyper-V machines out there somewhere. And the data center director, and I like the word that this gentleman has used because I think it's much better inside of here. This is the director for all intensive purposes. And if I go up to down to configuration, and I go to sites, you know, I can create sites based on names, for example, and make sure that, you know, the names is I might have, you know, ABC accountants, right? And their site, I'm going to create the site for them. And then using various mechanisms to do this, I can actually go and create a service node token for that site. And then when I install that, the agent out there or the service node out there, it says, where's the director? Where do I find this? Where do I find that? And yes, that's exactly how we go. Now, on the 27th of next month, that whole MSP arrangement will be available for distribution. They're just finalising how to deal with a month-by-month billing process at this point. But yes, Alex, you are correct. We will have the, if you've got a customer that's got a full vCenter site structure that spreads all over Australia, as soon as you install the director or the first service node for that site, is going to go and pick it all up out of their vCenter and go, all right, I've got all these sites, and then you can go and do what you want. But you can also, in this version, add in other sites as applicable. Okay, so that's what that's all about. There'll be more information coming about that one very soon. All right. Yeah. Who asked this question? Mark. Okay, Mark. Yeah, you're on. This is Mark's question, is in relation to when I created on this machine here. Sorry, give me 2 seconds here, folks. It's been an ongoing little bit of saga. When I installed a service node on this Hyper-V machine, it didn't tell me. It just said, yeah, I'm done. And you go, yeah, what have you done? And what's happening? And it takes a little while for you to work out that it actually is downloading the service node VHDX. And then after a certain reboot and whatever else, it says, right, I'm now going to fire this thing up. And that's why that snapshot appears, because that's where we're going from that point forward. And there is one of the things that we've said to the developers, said, yeah, look, it works, but for God's sake, tell me where I'm at in this process, because I have no idea what's going on. And all of a sudden, you open up Hyper-V and it says, oh, yeah, this thing's running. You go, what? Really? Yep, it's running. And you go, oh, okay. That is, I think, new to the scenario. It's one of those things that the developers go, yeah, well, we know what it's doing. Yeah, but we're the sysadmin type people, mate. We've got to make this thing work. I need to know what it's doing. And so that is something they've taken on board. Yeah, Mark, you're right. It's a bit painful. Yes, and I agree. Here's a question, and it's a good question too, by the way, Will. Any guess around the time frame for Hyper-V host-based backups? Well, to be totally and utterly honest with you, if we could have convinced the development team back in February to not worry about 2012 R2, we would have had it. 2016 and 2019, the host-based backups for Hyper-V, we can do it now. But because our developers decided to go backwards compatible with 2012 R2, it's held up the story dramatically. Just give me 2 seconds. I might be able to shed a little light on it for you. Nope. Folks, I'm going to show you something, but please don't hold it to me. Like, don't swear and declare that Jack said this, that, and the other thing, because I won't. This is a roadmap that I've asked that I can share with people. That's not cloud backup. I don't want that one. Right. That's cloud services. Wrong one. Sorry, folks. To answer the question, I thought I could have displayed something for you that would answer that question. I've got the wrong thing. The host-based backups of the Hyper-V 2012 R2 will be, I believe at this point, it is Q3 of this year. So July, August, September timeframe. It will be out unless we can convince them that we don't want to worry about 2012 R2. We want to go just 2016 and above. It could come earlier, but that's the issue at the moment, is they're sort of, worrying about making sure that we can be somewhat backward compatibility on that. So yeah, it's definitely on the roadmap. It is one of the more important things they've got to get done. because installing agents still is, well, you know, it's definitely effective, and we get all the restore capabilities and whatever else, but yeah, it's still an issue. Okay. Mr. Dean Fletcher, how are you, Mr. Dean? This question is not really related purely and simply to ShadowSafe in any way, shape or form. To deal with this one, I'm going to go back over here, folks. How's that little girl going? Still farting around? Yeah, that's all right. Okay, let's go back to here, and we'll go back to here. Okay. The question is, how are backups protected from ransomware? Well, backups are your last line of defense for everything, okay? And like any backup, be it Shadow Protect, be it Veeam, be it ShadowSafe, be it ArcServe, be it whatever, if the ransomware boys want to get involved on it, mate, there's not a lot you can actually do. If you're just talking about storing stuff on QNAPs or NAS boxes or Windows servers, I mean, I can show you the Windows server here. I'll open up another Windows Explorer view here, and I have the same backup sitting on this device here, right? And you can see them, right? There's all the images, there's all the points, there's all the sets, and it just makes sense. People know, yeah, fine, whatever, but that is a share, all right? Now, good old ransomware or CryptoLocker or whatever you want to call that lovely thing is always looking for open shares. Now, the best you can do is protect it for yourself, right? And make sure there's an offsite copy is the way I'm going to go. CryptoLocker will always take you out, given half a chance. Now, I guess I could go down this path as well, and I will for 2 seconds if you don't mind. And I don't want to spend more than 5 minutes of this. This thing will not eliminate CryptoLocker, but it will completely minimize the effect on your system. How the hell do we do that? Folks, just 2 seconds of your time, and I do apologize if people have seen this before, but this is a OneSafe. It's going to be called OneSafe from this point forward. This is the old web page still. This is, and so you can see I've got a 4 terabyte disk in there. I got a, what is that one? No, I don't know. Let's roll down here a little bit. What is this one here? 3 terabyte. What's that one? 8 terabyte. Most people would take one look at that and go, are you nuts? There's some technology at play here that will not eliminate CryptoLocker, but completely minimize the effect of CryptoLocker. So the reason I showed you those 3 disks was people are going, how the hell can you have an array? This isn't an array. This is object-orientated storage. So folks, do me a favor. Hold your right fist in front of your face. That is an object. Now, because of the way I've built this box, I'm going to keep 3 copies of that object. And that object will be stored on that disk or this disk or this disk. 3 copies, right? So what is that of any benefit? Well, that object, as I've written it to disk, inline dedupe and compress, once I write that object down, it is immutable, cannot be screwed around by anybody. Even you can get an arsehole administrator that can delete the entire share, sure, all right, but that can happen anywhere. But CryptoLocker cannot take that object because it is a unique, immutable object. Now, the next piece is in your left hand, make a cup out of it, and that's the metadata that references the file and references the object. So if I ever see that object again, I do not write that down. All I'm writing down is the metadata that says object number 1 is related to file number 2. And therefore, then we snapshot those objects. Sorry, wrong word, Jack. We snapshot the metadata every 30 seconds. So if I go back over here and I open this one up over here, all right, I go back into this share, there's that snapshot. And there's all the snapshots that we have. Those snapshots, folks, are also immutable. They cannot be modified. Mr. CryptoLocker can come along and screw up the top level, and I go, You finished? You done? Yes, delete, and then copy back out of the appropriate snapshot and put it back. Now, that's as far as I want to go with that conversation today, to simply say, one of these devices used correctly can be great for file serving. It's access-based enumeration, file serving. All right, those snapshots are seen as previous versions, and also another share for the backups. And most people are going to go, well, you can't have my backups and my files on the same box. Well, on here, we can possibly get away with it because of the way this thing is built. Snapshots are immutable, objects are immutable, therefore knock your socks off and go for it. All right, that's the way the thing works. I'll pop this thing back out again. Dean, I hope that answers your question, mate. I do ask, but it is still, I'll read this question and I'm sort of just thinking about this one. Sorry to have asked, but it is still impressive how easy it is to stand a file server up again. If you had a better network than I have, Scott, absolutely. My network's just, it's a playpen for me. I break things and destroy things. We probably should see how we're actually going over there now. Where were we on this machine? Hopefully that thing's coming up. It must be just finalising and getting devices ready, I would say. But yeah, it is. Obviously, on better machinery, it stands a buttload quicker. I could use a cloud share version that we've got, which would do it pretty well instantly, but I'd like to see what happens on an old buggy network. So that's fine. Yeah. A question here from the gentleman, Reese. Is there a problem if different customer sites have the same IP range? In version 1.7, it was a major problem. You could not do it. Now, because mine, I can come into here and I can create, if I go down to the sites area, I can create another site. But because the two sites are sitting on the same VLAN, if you want to call it that, IP addressing scheme, I will have an error because it'll say site overlap. All right, but when you create a site and it may have the same IP addressing scheme but somewhere else, and the service leader connects in, it's going to go, well, yeah, you're the same IP, but you're on a different network. So in version 2, that problem was addressed in that way, just to make sure it was different. On mine now, if I was trying to do the same thing, it would say, yeah, come on, Jack, they're both on the same network, mate, because there is no gateway to get to the other network. That's where it comes from, or simplification of the answer, I would assume. Just bear with me, folks. We'll just knock over some of these asked questions. Using the director sites paradigm, if I take over a client who's already on ShadowXafe from another provider, can I import their site into my director environment? The short answer to that one is, I'm just getting a drink of water. The short answer to that one is technically we can. There's going to be a problem, however, with licensing. So we may have to reissue the licensing to that system. But technically it can be done without a problem. Oh, you idiot, Jack, that's not what you wanted to do. Sorry, folks. I was trying to get to the entitlements page so you can see what potentially I was talking about. see here the StorageCraft licensing. This, obviously you can see that, and I'm having a little bit of an issue, and it's not because I'm doing something illegal. I'm using the same account as a lot of the other engineers around, but you can go and see claim a product. If you type your product key in and go and claim it, the only side issue to that one obviously is going to be just the verification process we're going to have to go through to make sure that the old customer, the old provider, is not trying to deal with it anymore, and we technically we can do it. So I'm going to say, yeah, we can. Okay. Right, so you're looking for, here's another question, folks. Are software updates able to be deployed to the director, service nodes, and agents automatically? If so, where do we do this from? We'll go to service nodes, and I'll just slide that across, and you just hit this edit the upgrade channel. I'm not going to hit that, and you can down in here you can pick whatever, and I've gone for the latest. I'll just go save. You can hit launch cockpit, which will take you across to this web page. You can actually do it automatically, but you can also manually force it if you want to. In the top page of here, when you're connected in over here, there will be a thing across the top saying there are some updates. Okay, you can see here I've got a communication error now because I'm trying to get to one of those machines, but that's because we're doing a thing right now. Wrong password. Of course it's a wrong password. We've been in here already. There we go. You got two ways: checking for updates. It'll click on it here, or if you go down here to software updates down here, it will actually go and check for them if you choose to do that. But as I said, if you come back into here, there will be on this page here across the top, there's an updates available, and then you can just go in and release them if that's what you want to do. Okay, so that's how that's taken care of. Is there application to archive storage options? The is it 6 weeks time? Not sure. There's a white paper already written that allows me to replicate to S3. Now that's available. Amazon S3, you can just replicate the backup images across the S3. The tape one, because you've asked that question, is there replication to archival storage options, S3 or tape? S3 definitely. StorageCraft Cloud, potentially. I don't consider the StorageCraft Cloud to be an archival option, however. It's more about DR. Tape, I doubt that we will ever support going to tape, but it is not off the cards completely because tape is a very good archival mechanism. It's no good for backups today, it's just too slow. Cataloging is all a pain in the neck. So I'm not going to say that we won't, but I'm not going to say that we will. We definitely ask the question. If there's enough people ask for the same thing, then we're bound to get it. It's not difficult because tapes today using LCFS, logical tape file system, I'm already using that for ShadowSafe, sorry, not ShadowSafe, SBX backups. I just use local drive replication to an IBM library and it just says fine. It just looks like a disk. You treat it like a USB. So it's not potentially not going to be an issue, but you know, it's not in the roadmap at this point. Andrew, I'm sorry. S3, absolutely. There is already, that's already there. Mr. Miller here has asked a question about how do I get access to a 30-day trial? Just go to the StorageCraft website, folks. Not that one. Not that one. Just the standard StorageCraft web page. we'll just bring it up here. Software downloads and updates here, and at the top here you will see SLA driven, yada yada yada, and you go in here, request an eval. If you request that evaluation, it drops an email into a particular email address that they can get separated out to the various countries, regions, or whatever. Somebody will give you a call and they will ask a few qualifying questions, and basically they'll give you the link to download it and potentially a trial key that'll bomb out in 30 days. So yeah, that's the way you can do that one. Whereas I think we got to the tail end of those. I'm just curious now to see obviously sitting on my slow network and slow devices, it's taking a little longer than normal, but as you can see, this machine's going to end up booting and it'll be fine. I like to use my old crappy machines because there's no smoke and mirrors with it. People can see, yeah, right, it's struggling and it's got its butt hanging on the ground, but that's fine. All right, folks, I have taken up an hour and a half or an hour and 40 minutes of your time. If there are no final questions at all, I am going to say thank you very, very much for your time. I definitely hope it's been worthwhile. Please reach out to anyone in the StorageCraft community if you need further explanations, help, assistance, whatever else is you would like us to do, we can definitely help out in that area. So thank you very much. And enjoy the rest of your day, folks. So at that point, I will leave you in peace and we'll close the meeting down. Thanks, guys.